The Enemy Within is my third John Bailey thriller, and like The Greater Good and State of Fear, my first two, it can also be read as a standalone. The book is set in Sydney, where there's been a series of racially motivated attacks on Sydney's streets, and a populist far-right nationalist figure has come to Australia to give a series of talks, and Bailey goes along to see him speak in Sydney. He's wanting to interview him and investigate far-right nationalism that seems to be gathering some support in Sydney. In the crowd is a bunch of white supremacists that Bailey had heard about but never met before. He starts looking into these guys, thinking that they're somehow connected to what's been happening in Sydney. At the same time, Bailey's home has been raided by the Australian Federal Police about us looking for the source of a story that he'd written quite a long time ago. These two stories collide in The Enemy Within, where Bailey's investigating these white supremacists with links to some neo-Nazis in the United States, while the Australian Federal Police is looking into him. Some of Bailey's sources are in danger, and Bailey's in danger too. John Bailey's an old school investigative journalist. He was a war correspondent in the Middle East for almost 2 decades. He's got a lot of skeletons in his closet. He was kidnapped and tortured in Iraq, and he's suffering from a lot of PTSD that he's been dealing with for quite some time, and he's an alcoholic. He's been off the booze for a while though. He's really doing his best to turn his life around, and his daughter, who he feels that he went missing for in those years in the Middle East, she's really been helping him turn his life around, and they've reconnected. He's got a dry sense of humour. He doesn't suffer fools. He wears the same pair of jeans, bloodstone boots and flannelette shirt, maybe like the one I'm wearing now, that he buys from op shops. But most of all, Bailey's, he's obsessed with his job. He's an obsessive guy. He's obsessed with chasing the truth. All of my crime thrillers are set in the real world. Everything in the books and the plot either has happened, could happen, or will happen. With The Enemy Within, there were 3 key things that really inspired me to write this. The first being the rise of far-right nationalism around the world. There are currently 6 countries at least where far-right nationalist populist leaders are in power. And they're offering really simple solutions to complex problems. Often their supporters are people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, angry at their lot in life. Secondly, social media and the spread of fake news, and how people go looking for like-minded individuals. They're not necessarily looking for the truth. They're looking for people that will tell them things that make them feel good about the way they feel about a story, or their own personal views on things. We see things like the anti-vaxxer movement, for instance, getting a lot of traction through social media, although I'm not writing about anti-vaxxers. The third thing was, a couple of years ago, my place of work, the ABC, was raided by the Australian Federal Police. They had a really powerful warrant that allowed them to delete or alter our files. And those words were incredibly troubling for journalists like me and journalists all around the world, that the police would have the power to change and delete your actual files when they're searching for, in this case, the source of a story that was written by a couple of ABC journalists a couple of years earlier. So they're the 3 things that really inspired me to write The Enemy Within. My writing process has changed quite a bit over the years. These days I tend to just only write at weekends. I've got a busy day job at the ABC, which I love as well. So for me, it's early mornings, 5:30, Saturday and Sunday. I'll get 3 to 5 hours done each day. Also, I've learned a lot about myself as a writer, that I tend to try to plot a lot more now before I sit down to write. So I might write 10, 20, 30,000 words exploring the idea of the book that I'm writing, but then I'll sit down and really plot it out so that I can get those twists and turns in there that I feel like I owe the reader every time I write a book. Well, when I created the character of John Bailey, a few years ago now, I suddenly realised I'm going to spend a lot of time with this guy. I really love writing his books. I love telling crime thrillers with him as the guy that takes the reader along the journey. CIA agent Ronnie Johnson, he turns up too. So I guess the answer to that question is that there's going to be many more John Bailey books coming. I think I've already given away that I'm writing another John Bailey thriller. Right now in Australia, there are more foreign spies or their proxies in Australia than at any time since the height of the Cold War. So I thought I'd have a little dig into what the Russians are up to. You can order The Enemy Within right now at booktopia.com.au.